We are continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, Siman Nun Hey, and we are discussing the halachot of who is considered part of the 10 when you need a minyan, and the minyan has to be, as we mentioned, as Shulchan Aruch said, in the same place. You can't have half of them in one room, the other half in another room if there are two different domains. So what exactly is the fine-tuning of that which is considered one room? So we saw the basics of it, and now we're going to speak about someone that's outside the Bet Knesset. Maran writes in Seif Yudalit, Misha Omed Achare Bet Knesset. If somebody is standing behind the Bet Knesset, he's outside the shul, Ubenehem halon, but there is a window connecting him with the people in the shul, and he's seeing them, they could see him. Afilu gavoa kama komot, even if it's not the first ground level. Afilu eno rahav arba'a, even if it's not a very large window. Umar'e lahem panav, he shows his face to them, they could see him, he could see them. Mistaref imahem la'asara, he is considered part of asara. The Rama adds, Gagin ve'aliyot enan bichlal bayit. When you have a rooftop, when you have a second floor, that is not considered part of your house, and hence, ha'omed alehem eno mistaref. If you're standing on the rooftop, you're not mistaref with the minyan downstairs. Now this, of course, will open room for questioning. The original format of a shul was that Ezrat Nashim always was in the balcony. Still, you have many shuls that they have the Ezrat Nashim around the shul in the second floor, and this way you maximize the amount of people who could sit in the shul. Also, this formats after what they had in the Gezuz Torah, the Ezrat Nashim, original first Ezrat Nashim that was built in the Beit HaMikdash, was also considered a balcony. That's how it was. Takara Gedolah, the Gemara says in Masechet Sukkah, Daf Nun Aleph, on page 51, that they used to make, by Shalosh Regalim, they used to make a balcony for women to be able to see the Simchat Bet HaShoeva and so on. So that also was a balcony. So is that considered a part of the minyan? If you have somebody learning, let's say, in the Ezrat Nashim, many shuls, they use the Ezrat Nashim, the Kolel over here in La Brea is the same way. They use the Ezrat Nashim as a Bet Midrash, a miniature library, so to speak, during the course of the week. Is that considered part of the minyan? If someone is learning there and you have 9 people down in the shul and they see each other, whether or not is that considered part of the shul is a question we have to deal with. Says the Mishna Berurah, Mistaref imahem, the after yeshev sek mechitza benehem. This guy that's outside the shul, even though that he is, I guess it here is, even though that is an outside domain, is not in the building of the shul, says the Mishna Berurah, and there is a mechitza, there is a divider between them. Since he shows his face to them, they could see him, he could see them, and you have a direct window. This is similar to what we have later on in Siman Kuf Tzadi Hey, when it comes question for Zimun, that if some of the people in this room see some of the people in next room, that sight connects the two rooms together. And now if you have, imagine a number of people here, a number of people there, and some, not all of them, but some of them see each other, that would be considered a seruf, and you could say a zimun ba'asara, for instance. This is actually very interesting because the Kaf HaChaim mentions that there are those who explain that when the Shulchan Aruch says mar'eh lahem panav, that he shows his face to them, the kavanah is not that he's showing his face to them only, but he has to have his head actually in the cavity of the shul, so to speak, right? And only then he is considered part of the minyan. Now that changes the whole ball game. Because imagine if you have that building over here and you have a window, this is second floor, their second floor, and it happens to be leveled, and he's showing himself from his second floor to our second floor, that's not going to be considered minyan, says the Kaf HaChaim. It's only a scenario in which you have one shared wall between the two buildings. So even though that's two different buildings, the guy could put his hand inside the shul or his head inside the shul. So his head is in the shul, so to speak, is in the same domain. Some of him is in the same domain, and that is what's considered part of the minyan. So that kind of like, nafal pita bebira. It's the whole geschmack, juicy leniency that we were expecting now kind of like fell apart, because you cannot be in a different domain and become part of my minyan. We spoke about the COVID minyanim. This became a very big thing. Of course, people were in different places and they wanted to be, if you saw in Eretz Yisrael, they had a lot of this. They had a different building and they wanted to have a shaliach tzibur in the courtyard, and this guy was in his balcony, that guy was in his balcony. Different people in different domains, all of them saw each other, but they were in different domains. Can that become a minyan? This became a very hot question during the course of when people were trying to get out of the quarantine of the pandemic, and it directly has to do with this sugya. So according to what Mishna Berurah said, basically, you would think that it's good, but what the Kaf HaChaim says as clarification in Dat Maran would actually make it very much challenging to have a minyan like that. Says the Mishna Berurah, according to this comes out that it should be simple, that people who are standing in Ezrat Nashim, and the mechitza between the regular area of the shul and Ezrat Nashim has a window inside the mechitza, right? Then it's considered part of the shul, basically, because you could, if there's only one mechitza, and that has a window, you could put even according to Kaf HaChaim, you're part of the shul. And you show yourself to them from there, they could see you. So if it's a good mechitza that they can't see you without the chalon, or the chalon is closed, then you're not considered part of the minyan. But if the mechitza, some of the mechitzas have a curtain, you can open the curtain. Some of them will have like a one-way mirror, but there are different one-way mirrors that the Shat Drasha, when the rabbi speaks, you open different panels inside the mechitza, and then you have a window, right? The glasses come like this together, and they open like this. So that will also be considered a chalon. You open that, you're part of the minyan. But if you have a regular sturdy mechitza in the shul, right, one of the satmar mechitzas, right, then it's not considered part of the shul. It's a different reshut. You're not supposed to be davening alone in the Ezrat Nashim if the people in the shul are not over there. So says the Mishna Berurah, and for sure, says the Mishna Berurah, if already in the shul they have 10 people, you just want to daven with the minyan, and you want your tefillah to be considered tefillah b'tzibur. It's not that they need you for the minyan. They have 10, more than 10 in the actual shul. You just want to be considered part of the tefillah. You don't want your tefillah to be a yahid tefillah, like davening alone at home. So says the Mishnah Berurah, for sure that is considered tefillah b'tzibur if they already have 10 people over there. Now, says the Mishnah Berurah, ve'af al piken, yoter tov im benakelhu lered lebet knesset sheyered. If you could be easily going down to the actual area of the shul and be part of the minyan, do it. Why do you have to rely on a heter like this when you could actually go down to the shul and be part and parcel of the minyan itself? Says the Mishnah Berurah, the yesh ma'acharonim shecholkim, because there are those who disagree with all of this concept. Vesovrin the inyanenu eno dome klal lezimun. There are those who hold that there is no comparison between zimun and minyan. For Zimun, you could be more lenient. For Minyan, you really need them to be in the same reshut, seeing each other, seeing one another, some part of this room, seeing some part of that room. It's not sufficient for Minyan, many Achronim hold. Again, amongst them is the Mishkanot Yaakov, the Vilna Gaon. Many Gedolei Poskim are stringent when it comes to this. And the Kaf HaChaim also writes that because we have a machloket over here, you should be mahmir and not add to the minyan, not consider part of the minyan, those people who are in Ezrat Nashim, on the balcony, and so on and so forth. So that's really the answer to the COVID minyan shaila that we had. Well, that may be a shot of dachak. It was in a situation that he had no other way out, really, and it was extenuating circumstance. So maybe a little different, but in a normal setting, Kaf HaChaim says you should not rely on it because it's machloket. You're saying all these things of dvarim shebikdusha, and you shouldn't be reliant on a kula like this when you have a machloket haposkim. So says the Mishna Berurah in the next piece, Gagir va'aliyot, the fact that he can't be on the rooftop or a second floor, b'chai gavna, she'en ro'in elu et elu. We're of course talking about the case that they're not seeing each other. They could hear each other, but they can't see each other. Revuta hayalolomar. You could have said a bigger hidush, afilu charlonot rehavot unemuchot kol she'enan shavot lekarka bet haKnesset v'af im hu omed betocham enu mistaref. That even if you have wide open windows and they are low enough, kol she'enan shavot lekarka bet Knesset, as long as they're not leveled with the karka bet Knesset, with the ground level of the bet Knesset, even if you are standing by the window, literally by the window, eino mistaref, you're not considered part of the minyan. Next Seif says the Shulchan Aruch, im miktzatan bifnim uktzatan bachutz. Imagine now a reality that some of the people are inside the shul, some of the people are outside the shul. Again, this happened to be a very relevant case because if you remember, towards the end of the pandemic, many people were very much concerned of, even if you're having masks and so on, they didn't want to be indoors, right? They didn't want to be indoors. So they had all this minyanim that was cold. So some people stayed outside, some people stayed inside, and the shuls were open to the chatzir. And you had a reality like that. So sometimes the minyan was not completed first, and half of the minyan was outdoors, half of the minyan was inside the shul that's attached to this outdoor area. So what is the halacha there? Says the Mishna Berurah, says the Shulchan Aruch rather, if half of them are inside, half of them are outside, and Shaliach Tzibur is standing mamash in the middle, in the door cavity of the door, in the cavity of the opening between the outside and inside, who mesarfan, Shaliach Tzibur, adds the two halves together, and now you have a minyan. Why? Because both of them need the Shaliach Tzibur. It wouldn't just be considered minyan with anybody else. But Shaliach Tzibur is who's being motzi the tzibur, so this half needs him, this half needs him, because he is the essential part of the minyan. It connects the two halves together, and there you have 10 together in the same place. To which Mishna Berurah writes, because he's shaliach tzibur, everyone is focused on him, everyone needs him. He becomes the connective part of the minyan. And kol sheken, it goes without saying that if you have 9 people inside and he's standing in the door cavity, then the shaliach tzibur is considered part of the minyan as well. There you have your minyan of 10. The who mistaref lahem, that he also is going to be considered part and parcel of the minyan. Now, if you have a reshut harabim between them, that's a different story. If you have a public domain passing in front between the halves, that perhaps is different, because in that case, even the shaliach tzibur cannot be mistaref. That's a real division of reshuyot, and that's not what we're talking about right now. In this case, Kaf HaChaim brings that there are those who hold that when half of them are inside, half of them are outside, that's the scenario that Shaliach Tzibur could be adding them together. But if you have 9 of them that are inside, and Shaliach Tzibur is standing in the door, that Mishna Berurah said it's Pashut, Kaf HaChaim says actually Shaliach Tzibur is not going to be considered part of them, and therefore he says you have to be Machmir. So this, which is Pashut for Mishna Berurah, it's like ironic. What Mishna Berurah holds goes without saying. Kaf HaChaim says actually that doesn't work. It only works when you have half here, and Shaliach Tzibur is in the middle, because the people outside need him, the people inside need him, and therefore it becomes a connective part. It becomes all one big place, and Shaliach Tzibur is in the middle of that big place. But if you have 9 people inside, and then 1 person is outside, even if he's Shaliach Tzibur, that's not considered perhaps part of the thing. How about the eye is more mekel, that even in this case is considered one piece, and therefore you could be metzaref the Shaliach Tzibur in that case as well. Let's just finish this line. Says the Mishna Berurah, we have to really do a little bit more in the next Seif in Shulchan Aruch to appreciate the next Mishna Berurah, but nevertheless, v'chol zeh davka b'shein ro'in elu et elu. Mishna Berurah finishes up that this is only when they're not seeing each other. But if some of them see each other, in every case there will be mistaref together. This is some part that after Seif Tet Zayin we will come back to this and revisit this halacha again. At some point at the end of these 3 Seifim, we have to go back and summarize all of the halachot that we learn from it and some of the very interesting questions that are brought in the Achronim. B'ezrat Hashem, we will do that in the days to come.